Hey, I'm Dr. Pilet, and today I want to talk to you about positive anticipation. Positive anticipation. And the reason I want to give you that notion is because a lot of people I work with have just the opposite, negative anticipation. A lot of the folks that I work with are going through divorces or separations from their children, unemployment. I got bills to pay and I can't pay those bills. And this problem that we get ourselves into is there's so much negative going in our world that we have this notion that it's never going to get better. How will I survive? How will I, in fact, get myself together? And yet, in working with people, I've seen people go from living under a bridge to within 2 or 3 years, buying their own home, having a new car. And yet, when you ask me what manifests that change, I can tell you, I see it all the time. I teach it all the time. And those of you that actually do this stuff will find that it really works. It really works. So the first thing you got to take a look at is that all of us where we are today have this notion of the world that's based on our experiences. You know, from birth, that baby's being held right here. And if mom is yelling and screaming, that baby has a concept of the world that's already introduced by mom's yelling and screaming. But if that same mother is very cuddling and very warm, and Christmases are full of Christmas lights and, you know, that idea of enriched environment, if you get read books, happy stories, you see things in life that are truly meant to be wonderful, then your concept of the world is so different from a person that's raised in a family that has varying people moving in and out. Of course, what I'm talking about is divorce. Or I'm talking about those people that find themselves challenged because I have to give up my child to my grandma or to my mom to help me because they don't have the finances and they're going to help me for a period of time. And so when we have that variety, that change in a child's life versus stability. Now, I teach a class called Those 5 Factors of Your Personality, and I would ask you at some point to go back and look at that.
Sorry.
And I would ask you. No, I did. I just cut it out. I would ask you to go back and look at those 5 factors that develop your personality. But I want you to at least start off with this notion that you have a concept of your lifestyle. A concept of your lifestyle. You're already beginning to think that process about negativity or potential for growth. And when we look at that idea of potential for growth, a lot of times I run into people that suffer from stagnation. You know, I don't have all of that stuff that you talked about, Doc. I don't have it. I've got a good, stable family. You know, we provide a wonderful, enriched environment for our children. But you know what? I'm stale. The 40-hour weeks, the same job. I have health insurance. I don't want to change that. Why would I rock the boat? Because things are going just fine. Going just fine because we have the safety and security needs of the family. But then again, I've got that reflected energy, which is I'm stale. I'm not moving forward. See, and that's one of these things that we all have to worry about, because when we get stale, we get bored. And when we get bored, emotionally, we're not enriched. When you're not emotionally enriched, you lose that thrill-seeking desire. Now, you know, when I was back in college, they had a guy that I ran into that actually was doing a study on thrill-seeking. Thrill-seeking. And I thought, well, wait, you know, why would anybody want to study that? But his concept, notice concept, the way I live, who I am, my lifestyle, his concept on how people created their image of what their life should be had a lot to do with their desire for thrill-seeking. Now, I don't like roller coasters. And for some of you, that's a thrill. I don't want to jump out of an airplane, especially if it's got good wings. And for some of you, it's a thrill. But also, thrill-seeking doesn't have to be on the edge of life or death. Now, to me, on a roller coaster, that's life and death. I'm absolutely terrified. And for some of you that are familiar with jumping out of airplanes, you might be carrying a conversation while you're in the fuselage getting ready to jump because you don't see it as a deadly event. I see it as a, oh my gosh, I'm not going to make it. I'm going to die. So that's not the kind of thrill-seeking I want. But the truth is, stagnation, thrill-seeking. What quality do you have in you that tends to resist stagnation and put you into that position of wanting something new? When you no longer have that desire for something new, life gets boring. Life gets boring. And from my perspective, a few years ago I read a book and I thought it was so cool. It was written by a guy, Ernie Lawson, if I remember right. But his idea was making up and breaking up. Making up and breaking up. making up and breaking up. And it's no mystery to some of you, and you've heard me say this before, the best sex you ever had was? Makeup sex, yeah. And yet that's very closely related to those people in life that are just bored. You know, I haven't tapped into that desire to have cutting edge stuff. That is the idea for newness. And because I haven't had that in my life, when I find myself creating chaos, because when you create chaos, guys, let me tell you, when I tell you to leave and don't come back, don't you dare walk in this door again, and you're walking out the door and you're heading down the street, what do you feel? Anxiety, yeah, fear. I mean, there's only two things in life that really define us. Pleasure is one of them. Pain is the other one. And those two define you. Those two work together to define you. And of course, the idea that I work with you every day, and the reason you're here is because I want to minimize the pain as much as possible and maximize the pleasure. But when boredom settles into your life and you're in one of those positions where, assuming you're not doing that addicted to chaos stuff, where you're not trying to ventilate your boredom, you're not trying to get rid of it, you've got to do that soul-searching part of you that begins to look at yourself and say, I need newness. I need goals. When I have goals that are attainable, and some may be on the edge, you're not sure they're attainable, that brings within me a certain amount of anxiety, and anxiety is good. You know, I had a lady come to my house last night, drove in from Miami, and they'd been through a few times, heard me speak, saw me on television, and they said, I'm so glad to see you, but I want to talk to you because I've started school, and I'm not sure I understand where I'm going with this because I'm with a bunch of young kids that don't have as much experience as I do. And you know, all I could do is give her a big hug and say, way to go! Because you're exploring possibilities. I don't know if any of you guys ever been fishing, but that is a tedious task. First of all, you got to buy a rod and reel. And some of you want to turn it upside down because it doesn't reel right until you figure out you can change the handle the other way, you know. And then you got to find a right bait, assuming you make it past the first fishing, right? And then when you find the right bait, you got to find the right tide, because nobody told you that the fish come in with the tide. Nobody told you about the water temperature. Nobody told you about the spring migration or the summer fishing and where to go, etc. But by the time you invested the energy, you find yourself receiving enough positive energy that you start to say, I like fishing. But until you catch fish, you don't like fishing. I don't, because it's all about money. I mean, when I look at the first 3 times I went fishing, I should have bought grouper at $100 a pound. And I would have saved money, man. I would have $100 a pound to save money. I got all this crap, and I still don't know where to go. And then, of course, those other people that have educated themselves to satisfy that need for success, remember, thrill seeking, the thrill of actually catching them, that I'm seeking, something that bring home, wow, look at this. You know, then I find myself, I'm not the only one that caught on to this because I go to my favorite spot and there's 17 other people and 14 boats. So you're not alone in this idea of thrill seeking, and sometimes maybe fishing isn't it, a source that's what we're talking about, because I'm talking about those passions that define you and bring you to your full potential. There's not one man in this room that cannot operate at least double of his potential right now. Not one of you. But to get there, you have to accept pain is a tool to be used for change. I have to look at my concept of the world, and my concept of the world is back where I started from. That little baby. You know? Who were your role models? Who were your mentors? Who are the people that expose you to everything that you are today? Because I guarantee you, you didn't have control of your life. You didn't have the ability to modify or change those inputs into your life until you were probably in your teens. Haplessly or otherwise, that first part of your life, you were totally dependent on those people around you that had that same challenge. But if you were raised in a world where stagnation had set in, and you weren't exposed to any degree of newness or looking for newness, how would you know? And so now we get to that point in life. Where I want to be somebody different. But we don't know where to start. I know that I've been defined by the way I've been raised. Got that. Now we're going to take that one step further. We're going to take a look at those 5 factors of my personality development, which I have on my website if you want to go looking for it. But then I'm going to start saying to myself, am I stagnant? Have I lost a sense of goals? And if I've lost a sense of goals, where do I have to begin to investigate to start to find out who I am? Remember I talked about fishing? Started off with nothing, ended up with something. Because the beginning of the journey begins with you asking the question, what turns me on? Where am I going? Now I love to do an exercise here, and it's called the Mason jar exercise. It's an exercise that's well published, and you might have heard a lot about it, but that's the beginning. See, the Mason jar exercise for me, and I've morphed it into what I use for my self-development, is I begin to look at how do I spend my time? I really need you to take a look at your given week, Monday through Friday, if you work a regular day shift or whatever, or if you work nights and weekends, whatever, put that in there. But I want you to account for how you spend your time. You might have 60 hours work. You might have 20 hours being at home, being with the kids, watching TV. But as you account for your time, I want you to take a look at those ways that you spend your week. And you might be one of these people that has 40 hours of free time. So you watch TV or you play Xbox. One reason I hate electronics is that when people are playing electronics, they start going, yes, I won! And all they won was the new level of some video game, and yet when it comes to life, they're losers. They're losers. They didn't win anything. They've been artificially manipulated, stimulated into sitting still and do nothing. True. That's wonderful, isn't it? But when I take away all those things, or when I look at or I assess all those things that I do, and I take a look at how I spend my time, now I want you to do something different. Go to another piece of paper. What are your goals? And you need to define those, layer them, put them out there in different categories, if you will. One goal can be to spend more time with my kids. I love that one. Or more time with my wife, and I like that one too. But it also can be my goals towards my career. Getting an education requires me to put the effort and the energy in there to get the degree. And when you think about that I'm going to get the degree, when you begin to process that notion and you find out what the curriculum are, when the semester starts, you're doing fishing. Remember, you went out there, didn't know what to expect, but now you got a curriculum, courses to finish, courses to complete, things to do. Whoa, I'm fishing. And as you take on the challenges for whatever that is, I want you to have positive anticipation for where that end result will bring you, get you. I want you to understand that's thrill-seeking. Because the thrill of having a new life, the thrill of having new relationships, the thrill of having more money than you know what to do with, is a motivational factor if you allow yourself to inventory where you are and start to realize you're sitting still, you're not going anywhere. The paddle's in the boat and the canoe is floating down the river, but it's being tugged and pushed by the tides and the currents of the flow of the north to the south, but you're not driving any direction. So when we begin to take that big inventory of ourselves, that idea of there is something better for me than what is, that status quo is not good. Status quo is the enemy. And when I begin to believe in myself that I have to have positive anticipation, but I bring that about through investigation, through an inventory of who I am. And when I bring to my life uncertainty, when I bring to my life, that I'm not sure what tomorrow is, but I'm heading for something different than what I am, you're going to find yourself energized with hormones, with personality traits, ambition, drive, desire, that when people talk to you and they ask you how you are, you're not talking like a victim anymore. How you doing? Oh, it sucks, man. What do you mean? Oh, man, thought I was going to get a raise and didn't. And, they raised the flipping rent of the house. And my car, when it drives, the wheels are doing this, and I can't really afford the, that's crap, man. The more you allow yourself to be a victim, the more you allow yourself to stay where you are, the more pity you get from others, and in itself, that's a lifestyle identity. And sometimes some people I work with truly just want to feel like victims because it makes them feel good. The only problem is it's a cell that they put around themselves and they never get out. I'm going to end this little bit here of a story, and it's a true story, about positive anticipation. And about the way that our brain works when we believe we've found something. I want to always relate to you back to that little story where I started. You've never been fishing, you bought a pole. You didn't catch nothing. Now you got a tide chart. Now you get the bait. Now you catch something. Whoa, we start catching bigger and we start catching bigger because you invested the energy to find out where to start. But you have to have that idea that there is something at the end of this, that there is something positive. Because if you really don't have anything positive in mind and you act like the victim, you'll go look at the fishing pole, you'll see what it costs, and you'll say, screw this. This is too expensive. I'll go buy my fish at the fishing market because he thought, we thought, you thought it was all about fish. But it's not. It's about challenge. It's about being smarter and harder. It's about winning. That's what energizes the Homo sapien human species. That's what gets you going. That is what life, and that's what you're stuck with genetically forever. You have to manifest something that pulls into you the personality that's unique and different for you to catch that fish. And it really isn't about what it costs at the fish market and about cheaper. It's not about economies of scale. It's about being human. Now, I'm going to tell you this story because it kind of tells you where we are, but there's this husband and wife that brings their twins. Twins are biologically the same. Brings into the psychiatrist because the woman's miserable. The father's miserable because every time there's Christmas, you know, they do their best to buy gifts, but they'll give them the same gifts, you know, and because you do that when you have twins. You know, my mom and my brother and I were 5 years apart, and they always bought us the same gifts. So the first thing the psychologist said is, look, don't buy them the same gifts, because when one opens a gift and the kid that's happy about the gift says, look, it's beautiful, look, I got a riding horse, isn't it beautiful? Then the other kid might be inspired into being negative because I got the same gift, why should I work? Why should I do that? So she said, I want you to balance these kids. I want you to find out what they want, and I want you to take and manipulate that the kid that's pessimistic gets something really great, and the guy that's optimistic gets really something kind of mundane, and we'll balance them because they'll both be happy. So they think about it and said, great. I know the little pessimistic guy, he wants a pony. A little pony. Yeah? So when Christmas morning comes, there's the box, opens the box and takes out the pony, and says, oh shit, what am I going to do with the horse shit now? Well, that kind of set up mom and dad for like, oh my God, so what is the optimistic kid going to do, because we gave him a box of horse shit. So the little boy gets over there, opens the box, sees the horse shit, takes off his shoes, jumps in and screaming, I know there's a pony in here somewhere! You get the point? You get the point? That the little kid that had nothing to work for still believed in possibilities, and nothing was going to rain in his parade, not even a box of horse shit. But the kid that was busy being a victim, you have to give up that victim role when life wins, when things are successful. And for some of us, we don't have anything else to weigh our lives on. And we keep locked into this negativism of the shit that happens to us because it's an identity. And we don't know what to do when we lose that identity. I want you to think about some of the things I've said. I started you off with this idea of we have to have a certain desire for change. And when we don't have that desire for change, we don't have the desire for the idea of positive anticipation for things to come, we become stale. And the staleness of our life can be everything from status quo, which is just nothing's wrong, but at the same time, nothing's exceptionally right. And I think that too is discouraging, and it really won't get you to where you need to be. But on the other end, I got people, their lives aren't working. And they're too busy being a victim, too busy thinking about licking their wounds and telling everybody the story. The brain can't tell the difference between the memory of a past negative event and it happening right now. And when we're victims, what do? We tell everybody about what happened and how awful it is, and we get this identity. Well, the real tragedy of this is you never get rid of that identity. But when you begin to flip to the other side, and you begin to find inspiration, motivation, positive energy. In fact, I have one of my tapes on YouTube is motivational energy, PME, positive mental energy. When you begin to shift into that idea of what can be. Remember, to catch a fish, you got to think about catching a fish, which brings you to that idea of a path. The path is found by you through exploration once you've decided what your destiny is. You know, I am absolutely amazed at the number of people that find a new destiny once they take the time to work through the anxiety and they work through that desire to find out, what am I meant to be? Is there something more to here than what I have now? And when they begin to do that, I'm often amazed at the striking changes that happen. Boom. All because they said, what if? And prior to that, they said, what for? I want you to think about everything I said here. Then I want you to try to apply that to your life by starting off with how you spend your time. Little simple thing, Messenger exercise, I'll give you copies of that. Now account for your time and see, is your time aligned with your goals? Now, if there's not enough goals on there that are going to manifest you that positive anticipation, you have to work to put a goal on there that's going to expose you to the notion of exploring what if. And yes, your stomach's going to be in knots. And yes, you're going to say, oh, I got a lot to do. And yes, you're going to feel overwhelmed. But when you do that, your body will kick into high gear as the neurotransmitters begin to pump in, norepinephrine, epinephrine, dopamine, etc. As they kick in and you begin to feel that, all of a sudden you're sleeping good. And now when you wake up, you're excited because I got things to do to get off this list as I move towards that idea of accomplishing these notions that I've come up with. Okay? Start off with these things I've asked you to do. I'm Dr. Pilet. I hope that you enjoyed that.